7th April 2024. Welcome to Labor Matters right here on KBN TV, the finest television in Zambia. You're watching Labor Matters once again, the show which comes to your screen every Sunday from 14 to 15 hours. And today I'm super excited because we have an interesting topic and I'm eager to just get to hear from you, our viewers, what you have to say about a topic of discussion. I am your host, Patricia Chilambikwa, and today we are looking at managing staff with connections. That is our topic of discussion for today. And please, so if you have any questions, comments about our topic of discussion, please feel free to use the number which is right on your TV screen, or better go on our Facebook page, which is KBN TV, and get to send us those questions. In the studio, I'm not alone. I am with Mr. Owen Katongo Kabanda, who is our very own special person on Labor Matters, because Labor Matters, it is not just a KBN TV show, but it is Mr. Owen Katongo Kabanda's program as well. He is a management and leadership advisor, international speaker, and a neuropsychologist. Mr. Kabanda, welcome to your show.
Thank you so much. How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well.
It's good to have you back on Labor Matters.
I'm glad to be here.
Amazing.
Yeah.
To our viewers, please feel free to follow Mr. Owen Katongo Kabanda on all his social media platforms. We're talking about LinkedIn, Facebook, TikTok, and any social media platforms that you'd want to follow him. Just search for Mr. Owen Katongo Kabanda. You will find him right there. Mr. Kabanda, once again, we are glad to have you on Labor Matters, and it is always interesting to have you because we get to learn every Sunday, and I believe our viewers out there are always waiting to hear what you have to say about every topic of discussion we talk about. So in the last episode, we talked about leadership for new managers, and it was a heated conversation, I must make mention.
Yeah.
And our viewers did send in quite a number of text messages. So that topic generated quite a lot of interest from many HR practitioners, young and older supervisors, and as well as managers who have said, no. They need help with how to deal with staff, with connections to higher authorities. I think these are some of the challenges managers as well usually face in some organizations.
Yeah, that's true.
So what's your take about the topic of discussion before we...
Well, I think we're going to have fun, and let's just interact and then from each other. Yeah.
So, but some employees, I must make mention, have also complained that it is bad when they are able to see that their work colleagues being given favors, as well as sometimes even promotions and salary increments. Please, some questions are quite a lot, Mr. Kabanda, and we need to accommodate people so that we can just get to hear the views as well. But to start with the topic of discussion, Mr. Kabanda, you being an employment expert, start by maybe helping us clearly understand an employment relationship and employer.
Yes, so Patricia, it's important to understand that in the world of work, the people that actually work have got defined roles. And regardless of which country you're operating in, you have to really understand when somebody becomes an employee, what does that really mean? As an employee, basically an employee is somebody who, in exchange for a wage, they will give a service to the employer. And when the employee starts work, they enter into a new relationship. And this relationship is called employment relationship. What that means is that the employee has agreed to work under the instruction and control of the employer. What that means is that the employer will give a guide in terms of the time for work, the expected deliverables for this employee, even the workplace where this person is going to work from. All those things are really designed by the employer. Including setting salaries, of course, taking into consideration the minimum wages of a country in which the company is operating. So that relationship is what the person will enter into with the employer. And when we talk about employers, it's basically also a person or an institution who also enters into a contract of employment in exchange to receive a service, and they'll give a wage in a very simple manner. So that includes even the supervisors. By law, in many countries, a supervisor, a manager, CEO, or anybody who has been given a responsibility to really supervise another person, or they have authority over another person, those they represent the employer. And that's why it's important that employees understand exactly what employment relationship really means, because then it starts to help you in terms of how you behave. Also, employers or supervisors also need to understand what that relationship means, even as you talk about these connections, and there's so many questions you have received. Because once you understand that there is this employment relationship, you have to then operate within the confines of that employment relationship.
If I remember, Mr. Kabanda, you have mentioned or said on this particular program that employees are also human beings.
Yeah.
Human beings are also, social beings who belong to different groupings with various connections to others. Now, is it a problem for someone to have connections? Because, we hear people say we need connections for us to be, in certain levels and whatnot. So, you being a neuropsychologist, is it a problem for someone to have connections?
I don't think so. The issue is that, like you said, employees are human beings, and as a human being, you definitely belong to a particular group, either by virtue of your church, or by virtue of the region you come from, or by the people you have interacted with, your school where you went, even just your family. So at some point, as a human being, you're a social being who end up being connected to other people at some point. And so for me, it's not an issue. The only issue that is there is that when you try now to abuse that relationship that you have, or the so-called connection, then it becomes a problem. Because, like we've said, when you're an employee, simply behave and work as an employee. That is what is key. So
are you trying to say that it is not a problem to have connections? Rather, maybe it is a problem when the employee maybe tries to, or actually use the connections to obtain favors, right?
That is exactly the point. Because as a human being, you always be connected to someone. Someone, somewhere, as long as you're on this earth. But what we are emphasizing is that do not abuse that connection.
Wow, amazing. I'm loving this because, it's this issue of having connections. I think it's one that I believe brings quite a lot of confusion in organizations, because as a person, you'll be like, okay, so my colleague is well connected, maybe with the CEO, maybe with the manager and whatnot. That's why maybe this particular person has certain favors.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, Mr. Kabanda, maybe we can also face some other questions or other challenges which some people face in organizations. You being an employment expert, you know that there are people who may be connected to big bosses within and outside their companies. Maybe others know people in a society, like maybe government officials, I must make mention, and politicians, while others could even relate to traditional leaders. These employees sometimes, Mr. Kabanda, make it difficult for HR practitioners and supervisors to manage them. For the fellow employees, what is painful is seeing a colleague, Mr. Kabanda, must make an emphasis on this one. It's painful to see a work colleague being treated better and maybe favored by the bosses. It hurts a lot, Mr. Kabanda. It really hurts. You're putting more effort, working, and you see this colleague, maybe, for them, it's a chilling kind of work. You're not stressing yourself. You know that, okay, the boss will favor me and whatnot. Maybe what is your take on this particular issue? Should not institutions have policies on fair and equal treatment of all staff, or maybe do we have any laws which must be followed?
Yeah, so really, like you say, I know it's a painful thing for anybody to really put in so much, and you're seeing somebody who is presumably not doing so much, and they're really getting all the favors and so on. It's not a good thing. And that is why what we do emphasize to employers is let's treat everybody equally. Make sure that you have policies and procedures in place that actually guide the way you're going to treat and manage employees. Because when you have these policies in place, I know that sometimes some people would say, no, it's not necessary to have policies in place, but those are actually important, especially as your organization continues growing or your company continues growing. When you're just alone, like we've said, it's a simple thing, it's how you decide. But as long as you're going to now work with 1, 2, 3 other people, it's important to have in place the policies so that you are treating everybody the same. when you look at, regardless of which country you're operating in, let's say in Africa or wherever, if you are, for instance, working under the International Labour Organization, there are provisions that require institutions to make sure that they are treating individuals in a fair manner without discrimination. And discrimination actually happens at two levels: before the employment itself and after employment. So what has been prescribed is to make sure that even in your recruitment processes, you are not discriminating people. Even when they are working with you, again, you are not discriminating those employees on gender, sex, racial affiliation, or whatever it is that is there. You need to make sure that you are just treating employees in a fair and transparent manner, because everybody deserves to be treated well. And if the person is bringing value to the institution, why should they then be robbed? And the other people who are not bringing value are the ones who are getting better treatment.
So, Mr. Kabanda, in a situation where I get to see a colleague probably being favored and whatnot, so what should these other people that don't have connections get to do? So they should just watch and pretend nothing is happening?
No. They shouldn't just watch and pretend nothing is happening, because that is what creates now environments where now there's a lot of animosity and people are not happy. Usually what we advise is that, like we said, institutions should have policies. And this is why if you are a company, a business that is starting, or you have been operating, make sure that you have procedures in place. You should have, for instance, disciplinary procedures in place. How are you going to actually want someone to change? How would you make sure that if they are not changing, you can educate them? If again, even after education, they are not changing, you can end up with charges and so on. But on the other hand, there should also be a process, a clear process for grievances. Meaning an employee who has a grievance, where should they go? Because these are things where you have not clearly stipulated the grievance procedure, and employees now just end up, either talking about things with labor office, or they will be writing things on social media, because they have not been given a proper process to follow within an institution. So there should be a grievance procedure such that employees who are grieved, like you're saying, could then go to either a supervisor, beyond the supervisor, maybe there's HR, beyond the HR is the CEO, beyond the CEO, maybe the board, and so on, all the way to the necessary institutions like the courts and so on.
Well explained to our viewers who are watching Labour Matters right here on KBN TV. And today we're looking at managing staff with connections. That is our topic of discussion for today. If you've been in maybe situations where you see your colleagues maybe being favored and whatnot, and you have questions on how to handle such kind of situations, feel free to use the number which is right on your TV screen. Send us a text message, and you can also go on our Facebook page, which is KBN TV, and drop us a comment right there. So, Mr. Kabanda, when we're talking about the issue of connections, sometimes it comes, we see some people being in relatives, sometimes there is even a romantic relationship with people in organizations involved. Is there a risk for a supervisor or manager who just ignore or treat that employee anyhow? I know you've tackled it, you've mentioned some of the things, but if you can also talk about it again on how these supervisors and managers get to maybe make sure that, because it's challenging. I know it's challenging for HR.
It is very true, and like you said, there are risks. Yes, there is a risk. If somebody is well known to be connected to somebody, and as a supervisor or HR, you pretend that is not there. Sometimes that could be very dangerous for a simple reason. Some of the employees who are connected to someone, like you say, maybe it even involves a romantic relationship with some people within the institution and so on. Those people, to some extent, they tend to influence how supervisors maybe perceive you, meaning your own supervisors, for instance. Those people, that junior could go to complain, and those are not even following the normal channel of grievances, so they can go and complain to somebody who is over and above you. then that person, depending on how professional they are, sometimes there are people who have not been exposed to how, proper ways of treating issues. The supervisor will just come down on you, hey, you're not treating people properly. They are saying all sorts of things, even when it is not, doesn't have any facts. Because sometimes that junior who is connected will go and cry out to somebody above, and they generalize things. No, you see the way this man or this woman is treating us is so bad, but it's just you. But he or she will make it appear like there's a huge problem, and then you are now being seen to be the actual problem. So, yeah, like you're saying, it's important that supervisors pay attention to such things and also invest in learning best how to get around those kind of problems so that they then sort such employees out before things escalate to situations which are worse.
So would you say that standardization of maybe policies in the company and inductions for staff help in any way to reduce the impact of these kind of connections?
Yes, it's extremely important, and that's why we are saying if an institution does not have policies and procedures in place, and when we talk about these policies and procedures, we're talking about everything from how do you do your recruitments, for instance. It needs to be very clear, who are you going to bring into the institution, how do you treat them, and all those kind of things. Issues around salaries. We have talked about this even in previous episodes. If you're just awarding a salary based on how you have talked, which is a good thing for some institutions, but again, we always advise have policies around salaries, salary administration and benefits administration. Have policies around performance management. How are you going to tell that this person is a performer, this one is a non-performer? You should have clear deliverables. How are you going to treat people when it comes to training? Who goes to training? There are these things where just one person is the one going local trainings, international trainings. How are you arriving at that person? And everybody else is not important to go for training? So you have to have policies around everything. Training, including all the way up to staff separation. How are you going to actually separate with employees? So the policies are extremely important, and you also need to be very clear about your code of conduct for the institution. What are the expected standards here? How should you perform? How should you behave? Those things should be made very clear even to employees at the time. So when you are recruiting an employee, the first part you bring them in, you start training them. You do inductions. These are the acceptable standards of performance and behavior in our institution. In that way, you have made it clear to that new employee whether they have connections or no connections. And also you have made it clear even to the other employees in terms of how you want, the kind of culture you want in the institution. When you leave things to chance where there's no policy around, there's no direction, then people start now to really behave in whichever way, whichever manner they think like, and that is what now creates a lot of these problems, which now leads to these connections now wanting to show that they really have the powers over everybody.
If you can also talk about the people in top management, let's talk about the board and maybe even the big people outside of the institution. What do you do? Because they will start bringing pressure when you treat their person in a manner that they are not happy with. Because you did mention saying that a junior goes up to the maybe CEO and whatnot to complain, okay, I am being treated in this particular manner, and the person that that junior is complaining to is maybe the overall boss and whatnot. So your take about this?
Yes, again, it comes back to having these, some policies in place. One of the things we do advise is that, for instance, let me talk to colleagues in HR, for instance. When you have these policies and procedures, the conditions of service, if you have new bosses, let's say your new CEO or new directors or managers or whatever, have those inductions done also for them so that they understand what, as an institution, you are able to offer. Remember, these managers that you're going to have and supervisors or even the general manager or CEO or governor in the institution, they are coming from different institutions where there are different practices. So they could be coming from a government institution or a private institution or an NGO, and there are different practices in these institutions. So when they come to your institution, it's important that the employee, they have the right to treat you as an employee because they are employers. And that's why, again, we talk about even the training for managers. Sometimes managers don't also even have full appreciation of the powers that they have. They feel they can't do anything because so the employee starts to call the shots. No, it should not be like that. Employment, the person entered into a contract to be an employee, so you should make them understand. Okay, so when you're an employee, for our colleagues that you have talked about, please behave and perform in line with the requirements of the institution. Otherwise, at some point, it is okay sometimes to grow wings, as people say, but things change. You never know, the very supervisor or somebody in management or outside who was giving you, that ability to boss everybody around, that person can go. And this is where now you start seeing how miserable you can end up becoming, because now everybody was waiting for that chance. And again, it should never be like this. Employment, we are working there, you should just be a professional, just do your job. You don't need to be referring to anybody, whether within the institution or outside of the institution. Just do your job. This is what I came here to do. I've done it. My supervisor is happy, and you're making the whole institution or company to go forward. That is what is key. Discipline them. Then we can know that, yes, you are a real leader there. You can actually discipline the very person that is connected with you. Otherwise, if you can't, then we start to see, hey, no. No win-win.
No winner. What approach should be taken when a staff or maybe staff is connected to that supervisor? You are in your psychologist, Mr. Kabanda, and you know that sometimes there could be these battles without one saying anything to the other. So just your take about this.
Where you are in the middle, that one again is a very difficult thing. You are here, you have a junior, and the junior is connected to your boss. That one becomes sometimes a challenge. I think, again, it goes with what I was talking about. First of all, understand how you need to manage the people below you. If you are very clear about the targets, but even before you get to that, first understand how you are going to work with the boss. We have talked about managing upwards before. Make sure, of course, you should not be in a place like that where you are not allowed to actually do a job properly.
Now, with your vast experience dealing with small and big corporations in various sectors, what would you recommend as a way to manage employees who have connections to board members?
With the board members, those ones, again,
Special case.
It's a special case because they have authority even over and above your own CEO. And they are not people that you're actually able to see every day. They don't come for work like your CEO. So sometimes that becomes very challenging. But in terms of managing that process, if you are a supervisor or a manager, discuss these challenges that you may have with your HR, and we believe that HR should also find a way to discuss those matters with the CEO, and that they have ways in which they engage board members. Remember, the board members, their role is to safeguard the interests of the institution and simply make sure that the institution is delivering on its mandates, the policies are there, and so on. So it usually takes the head of your HR department and the CEO of your institution to basically engage the board members to help them appreciate how you are operating. Also, because sometimes what could happen is where this employee complains to those board members, and then the board member will make a big, huge issue about it. No, in this company, the way you are treating employees, even when they do not have the actual facts. Now that becomes a bad thing if it ever happens that way. Ideally, we expect that if there are such kind, not a political ground. This issue of combining politics, business, and whatnot, again, that is what creates that kind of situation When from the beginning you tell employees that this is work, we are here to do business, and it's not a political place. There are employees who can even be cadres where they're coming from, or there are employees who are even, what do you call them, area chairperson or secretary in that political party. When they enter the gate, they are not within your premises to do politics. They are there. Remember, we talked about who an employee is. You signed a contract that you're going to give a service in exchange for a wage. So, and you're going to work under the instruction and control of the employer. So what that means is that the politics should be removed from work. And if there is a politician, for instance, who is actually now making these persons to feel certain ways, again, go and engage them. Like I said, they're just human beings. We've been to situations where you go discuss, oh, boss, there's this issue, this is how we're operating. And again, these people also, they don't also want, remember, like I said, they don't want to do things which are not within the laws. You explain to them processes, you explain to them how you operate, and also look at their interests. Sometimes this confusion comes because they're also trying to push the certain interests. Help them to understand how you operate as an institution. To a point where, I remember at some point I was in construction and this employee saying, now, hey, I'm going to call this person. But that is the person that I'd actually talked to even before the disciplinary process had started. That this is the situation and this is how this person, by the way they're behaving, they're actually making your name to be tarnished. By the time we are firing the person, I said to them, do you want me to actually call that very person you want? Point is, just do the right thing, be fair to everybody. That is all that matters, whether they are connected to who. Even those people they are connected to, they are also human beings. They understand when you engage them.
Fairness is the only thing that matters. Mr. Kabanda, you are an influencer with quite a huge following on all your social media platforms, and you do understand the power of influential figures. How can a manager effectively get to?
They understand the process. When they understand the process, for instance, if the chief or traditional leader understands your recruitment process, also explain to them the expected performance and behavior of the employees. When they understand, they can even become your ally. Okay, you explain to them, no, this company we are setting it up in your chiefdom, it brings development and so on. You explain those things to them, and you tell them that you're looking for people who actually are honest and are hardworking, so that it brings benefit to the community, and not people who are actually going to be stealing and so on. And if that happens, when somebody is not performing, we do go through the due process and we let them go and replace. When you help the traditional leaders to understand your recruitment process, how you manage employees, including how you separate with employees, they are going to support you. To a point where even that person who says, oh, I'm connected to the chief, if you discipline them, I mean, if you have not been changing, the chief will really be on your side. The thing is, avoid what we tell even HR practitioners or managers and supervisors. Understand how people work and stay in those places. Give them the respect, the traditional leaders, but help them to also institution or a business. The third thing is that your employees, like we've said, we cannot overemphasize this issue. Create a culture where people are focused on performance and not petty issues of connections. When we see a lot of this connection thing, it simply means there's something wrong with the culture of the institution. It means that you need to go to the drawing board and come up with a culture